Hey there! So it was a beautiful day out here in the desert. It's a very nice campsite. Just had some coffee and got to thinking, you know what I'd really like today is some cake. I'm sure you have those days where you just want some cake. Funny thing about when you're thinking about baking in general, in a situation where this is what you got to work with. It's not really obvious. It's not obvious anyway. You could do some research, and I certainly have, but it's not obvious how you would go about baking when that's what you're dealing with. So I've definitely done research in the past, looked up like Boy Scout methods, hobo methods, stuff like that, and it always seems like there's a couple of like things that I need, some tools that I need, devices, and just things just a little bit beyond what I have on me at the moment. And a lot of them are based around a campfire too, right? It's like campfire coals and that kind of thing. But I like to keep it all really simple, really compact, with just some pots and stuff. So how do you do baking in that kind of situation? I definitely tried to bake things in those little pots. I hadn't quite figured out a good method for it. So eventually I figured out a way to do it so that I could do something like bake cake, something really simple. And it turned out to work really well. And I've since then come up with a couple of different ways that I'm going to show you. But for right now, we'll start with one of the first ones that's actually really straightforward once you understand this is all you really have to do. So I'm going to get set up here. With the usual, I'm going to point you down. So we got our usual gasifier, and I've already got it loaded up. And here's what we're going to do. I'm going to go ahead and get the fire started, and then we'll proceed with the method. And this time for starting the fire, I'm going to show you, I said we're going to be doing different methods of fire starting in the event that, it happens. Sometimes you just don't have lighter fluid or whatever it is you need. So I'm going to get Vaseline cotton balls, very common backpacking trick for really great tinder. The main disadvantage of this is that it's really messy, but we're just gonna put some Vaseline on here. The cotton ball itself is extremely good tinder, and the Vaseline also lights up well, but it's mainly to keep it going long enough to get the fire really hot. So that's our goal with the gas fire stove, not just get it lit, but get it to be hot enough in the chamber to pyrolyze all of the pellets. So what we do with this is just like to cut it in a couple pieces, but it's slippery now, so it's a little difficult. So that has gotten annoying. Kind of overdid it. In fact, there's not really enough room to put a whole ball in there, so we'll just take a couple pieces, stick them in there. And kind of the danger of this, as well as using paper and stuff, is that there's a tendency for it to block things up for a bit, block up the airflow. It's not that much big of a deal, because it does sort of disintegrate into a very small, or even just very small pocket, or just basically disintegrate away. Okay, I'm going to get these off my fingers. Wipe them off on. So as I'm wiping them off, it also reminds me, Vaseline on paper towel. Just consider that two methods. Just something that burns easily, but you use this to just prolong the burn a little bit, so it doesn't just like disintegrate before it actually gets hot in there. So, in fact, you probably have napkins more readily available than cotton balls, though maybe you do have cotton balls more readily available. But I would think that most people would probably have napkins more readily available. So we'll just get that lighted. You can see it lights up instantly. The cotton, it's really easy to get going. So Now in this situation, if I was using lighter fluid, I would say that's a good enough fire. It's going to heat up instantly and we're going to be able to begin doing what we need to do. But we'll see what happens. In the meantime, I'm going to show you what we're going to do with these pots. And it's really kind of simple. What we're going to do is we're going to make a pot in a pot. It's going to be sort of a Dutch oven sort of idea, but it's going to be sort of an insulated Dutch oven in this case. So we're going to use an inner pot, because what we could do is we could just bake a cake right in here. It would actually work, but you can guess just the fire hitting this spot is going to burn it on the bottom without actually, before it actually cooks the rest of it. But if we put it in here, it'll allow the heat to, you know, sort of like a convection oven in a bit, not exactly though, but it'll allow it to evenly disperse around the whole deal. But if we put it right on the bottom, it's going to have the same problem. It's going to transfer from the outer pot right to the inner pot. So what we want to do is space them out. I just got some pea gravel. Just going to stick it on the bottom of the pan just for support. Nothing fancy, no thermodynamic principles or anything. I'm just putting it in there just to support it. Just going to do that. Okay, it seems to be hitting. Yeah, I think that's going to work. Okay, so I'm just going to shrink that one, set it in there, and if the rocks are distributed evenly enough, then it should just kind of sit in there. If it's not perfectly even, it's not that big of a deal, but you don't want it like just leaning against one side. So that should be good, and that's really all we need to do. Just got that going. We'll just put our cake mix right into there, our batter rather. I've already pre-greased it, so I'm just gonna get all this in there, and the fire seems to be going really well. Kind of got interrupted, and this cake batter is kind of stuck to this a little bit. That's a little bit of little annoying. And the cake mix, I didn't modify it in any way at all, in case you're wondering, except that I made it vegan by using a flax egg instead of one from a chicken. And a flax egg is really easy to make. If you're, at some reason you don't want to use a real egg, you just get some flax seeds and soak them in water for a little bit, and then it gets all slimy, has a texture exactly like an egg, and it winds up serving the exact purpose of an egg in many recipes. Okay, I'm going to say that's good enough for me to proceed, and then I can just lick off the batter in here. Alright. That's all in there, good. Let's see if I can get some of those rock studs that side, a little more even. And that is going really well. Let's see, another chance for you to see the flame patterns. There's a little bit of vortex action in there. Hope you can see that. I can't really see where I'm aiming the camera. So let's set that back there. And now it's just really as simple as anything else that we bake. We're just gonna do the same thing, or anything else we've cooked. It's just we've modified our cook pot, and that's all we've done. Nothing complicated at all. I'm just gonna set that there. Put the lid on top, both lids on top in this case. Uh-oh. I got a bunch of weird stuff in here. What is that? Not sure what it is. Okay, it's okay. It'll be cake decoration. Put the small lid on, put the big lid on, and actually let's do this. And we're good to go. Now you noticed I didn't really preheat it, and in this situation, yep, fire's still going well. In this situation, you kind of don't know what you're going to get. The thing about like baking temperatures, they're sort of guidelines. You can almost always bake a little bit colder, it will just take longer to cook. You can bake a little hotter, it'll cook a little faster. But if you want the perfect recipe, use the exact temperature, exact ingredients, and so forth. But in an off-grid situation, you don't always get what you're not in a controlled environment. So it's really important in this situation is just gradually get experience of how long does it usually take you, and then be able to adjust for things like if it's a little windy, then this isn't going to be as hot. It's going to take you a little bit longer to cook it up, right? And there's lots of other situations that could change. Like if your fire's not really working that well, it could take longer. If it's a really hot day, your fire's working really well, it might take a little bit less time. You know, stuff like that. So they're just sort of guidelines, and usually what I do is go in just a few minutes before I expect it to be done and make sure, and just, you know, give it, in this case, the cake test. Just stick your little knife in there and see if it if you're pulling up cake or not, and just put it in for, you know, your guess at how much longer. In this case, it takes about a half an hour on the stove, assuming sort of an average flame, I guess. And you have two options at this point. Once you think you've got it heated up, basically, you've got the process started, keep it going for the remaining time on the stove. Or if you don't have time to wait half an hour, like you want to pack up and go, then what I would do is use the thermal cooking method. Is you just take this pot and stick it in your cooler, warmer thing, you know, cover it with your blanket, zip it all up, and then get on the road, and then open it up. You know, you could open it up an hour later, 2 hours later. And the thing about thermal cooking is because, you know, it goes down, it gets cooler and cooler, so you don't really have any. Basically, everybody who does thermal cooking says there's kind of no chance of burning anything, because it's always, your temperature is going to keep on going down throughout the entire time. It'll just be that instead of one really intense period, you're just kind of averaging out over a really long time. So it'll gradually cool down. Your cake will be cool by the time you pick it up 2 hours later, 3 hours later, maybe even pick it up the next day. I don't know how that will hold up because I haven't tried that, but yeah, it's a good way to just have totally unsupervised cooking. In this case, I want to use my pot pretty soon, and I don't want to wait. I don't want to just tuck that away for another hour or two, or however long it's going to take. And so I'm just going to leave it on here for half an hour and come back so I can do more stuff, do more cooking. All right, so I guess I'll see you again. I'll check in with you in half an hour to see how it's doing. All right, so it's been about 20 minutes now, and I have a suspicion, because it's a very hot day and the fire is going really well, that it might be approaching done now. So I'm going to give it the first test. Let's just take that off, and then get that off without burning myself. Ooh, it looks very good. You see that? It looks very good. So just turn this camera so you can see, and then I'll do the first test. Well, that's about as clean as you can get. So now I'm curious if it's like burnt on the bottom. No, it actually feels really well. There's nothing stuck to the bottom at all. So there we go. It took about 20 minutes on a good day. And on other days when it's a little bit more windy or something, it might take you up to a half an hour, and maybe longer depending on how many times you have to check it. At cake time, yay.